Welcome to Not a Great Whisper podcast. This is your host, Katie Ray. I'm coming to you from Becan Creative Studio in Ybor today with the lovely Elizabeth Brackman from All Y'all Yoga, her new studio, which is opening
February.
Oh my goodness. This will probably be out after February, so she will be up and running. Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
I think your story is beautiful and amazing and opens the eyes of many people. And I would love for you to share with us today and just how you got on your journey and coming from, you were working remote in a corporate world to where you are today, and your relationship with your spouse.
Yeah.
So we'll start with Charlotte. I think she deserves to be started with, right?
She's pretty amazing.
Yes. Let's do it.
Yeah. Charlotte and I have been together since 1991, which, as I've been having conversations with lots of different people recently, especially after, leaving a full-time job that involved sitting in my house and having most of my communication be through devices. And the more conversations I've had lately with in-person people and a lot of young people whose eyebrows shoot up into their hair, wow, that was actually before I was born. So we've been together for a very long time. And it's been a very, very interesting journey with her. So lots of layers there. So we were both kids when we met, and I think I had just turned 21, and she's just a little bit younger than I am. And pretty much everybody thought that she was a he, including me. But we had, it was really very fast for both of us, fell into each other's orbit very rapidly and realized very quickly that it wasn't just lust. And admittedly, it started it out that way. But we quickly discovered after having actual conversations with each other that we were really meant for each other. And all of the drama that ensues from, young people in love. And so we moved in together. I think we had only been sleeping together for maybe 10 days or 2 weeks. And then so we started shacking up together, and then we found a condominium together with a bunch of other people. And it was not too long after that. So we'd been together maybe weeks, maybe a couple of months at that point when she told me that she was really a woman inside. And so I knew for all of those years. It stayed on the interior of our relationship for a long, long time.
Oh, so you knew since the beginning, really?
I did.
Okay.
And, right on the heels of her telling me that was, I'm never going to do anything about it. It was the early 90s at that point, and people have a lot of feelings about trans people in general, and there's a lot more transphobia, I think, back then, and a much less understanding of what that actually means to be transgender. And so it stayed on the interior of our lives for really decades. And it wasn't until very recently that, she did really her best to inhabit being a man in the world. And we lived that together for a very long time. But it got to the point where that was just not sustainable. And so she decided to transition and make that manifest in her life. And so I think one of the reasons that I was able to weather a lot of the frustrations that come along with somebody undergoing a massive transformation like that is that it wasn't a secret to me. It was not a surprise. When she told me, it was that she needed a transition, not that she was transgender, right? And I think that made a difference in our ability to be able to navigate that together, is that, it wasn't a surprise to me. And I had, in our support groups, as we were going through the very beginning stages of that transition together, a lot of spouses that I spoke to had a sense of betrayal and shock because the person that they had been with had kept that a secret from them and maybe even from themselves. And so I think that the difference for us was that she never kept that from herself any more than she kept it from me. And I think that was one of the things that allowed us to weather that.
And you felt like you already knew it wasn't a betrayal because you knew
I
who
knew
she was.
who that person
and she
really
told
was.
you that for years. So that was something you went through together, but you weren't blindsided. Like, oh, this was something you couldn't tell me for this many years. So through the support groups, were people a little bit envious that you knew so many years when you would tell your story?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of, well, you're very lucky, and definitely do not take that for granted, because the experience that Charlotte and I have had has been rare in the world of people transitioning from the incorrect gender to their correct gender. A lot of relationships don't survive intact. That's actually more the norm than what she and I experienced together. So we do recognize our privilege in
But
that.
you should give people hope.
I certainly hope so. I definitely hope that Charlotte and I can be an example of what is possible if you let go of your preconceived notions of what you think a married couple should be, of what you think that a marriage should be, of what you think what heteronormative means, like what letting go of whatever labels and definitions that you have, and really truly trying to see the person who's in front of you. And that's not an easy thing to do. We come with a lot of filters.
Filters and expectations and things that we're just like, oh, you're not doing this or you're not doing that. When Charlotte first told you that, do you feel like everyone has their own timing, just for the LGBT community in general? The timing of coming out, the timing of transition. Do you feel that you couldn't have done anything to help her push that along? It was on her to figure out when she wanted to do it?
And I think that's really true for anybody who decides to go on that journey. And I think that's true regardless of whether it's transgender or not. When people are ready to take those steps, it really is up to them. It is up to the people in their lives to then decide how they're going to hold that person's hand through that journey. And there are, of course, places where we have to go by ourselves, where nobody can hold our hands. But, being a part of somebody's journey and participating in that way is a blessing. And that is, that also, and having that perspective helped me through some of the more frustrating parts of that transition, and knowing that being a part of somebody's transformative journey, regardless of what that is an opportunity for you to examine who you are as a human being as well. And to look at it from that perspective, it opened up a lot in my heart. And that allowed me to get through a lot of the things that were frustrating to me. So yeah, I think it was definitely a blessing.
Transition. Yeah. I think everybody has their own transitions. So what do you feel changed for you when the transition was official, when Charlotte came up to you and told you that?
That is an excellent question.
Thank you.
Lots of things. Lots of things. I can remember after years of us, living this very traditional male-female roles, right? And I never really fit so carefully into female mold. I mean, I am a cisgendered female, but I also grew up, quote unquote, kind of tomboyish and identified a lot with boys as I was growing up. And so inhabiting these roles as quote unquote man and wife, we fell into those roles pretty easily, right? Like they're conditioned for us, right? So we lived that pretty well. And one of the more superficial things and amusing things that I noticed was just in terms of us getting ready to go out. Right. So previously, I was the one that had to take a lot of time getting ready, putting on makeup and jewelry and figuring out my outfit and all of that. And my partner took, a little bit of time. And the reaction that I would get to being all dressed up, hubba, 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 right? That changed to I was the one who was able to get ready really quickly. And Charlotte was, then wanting my input on how she looked, right? And so that the attention that I had been getting that was soothing to my vanity in terms of you've noticed me, right? That attention had now shifted to her as she was trying to figure out who she was as a woman and what she wanted to present as a woman, right? So that was a very different thing. And that, that's one of those preconceived notions that I had to let go of was, do I actually need that kind of attention? And the answer to that question was,
can I share it?
Yeah, actually, no, I don't. I don't need that kind of attention. I got plenty of it already, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you're like, I'm good. I'm fine. What do you think? So your relationship was good, even though you were kind of fitting these norms that wasn't really normal for you. But how much has it grown now?
I mean, her coming out and transitioning, it saved us in a lot of ways. The last few years before she came out and before she transitioned were dark and sad in a lot of ways. I mean, she was trying to be somebody that she wasn't, and all of the things that come with that, with somebody trying to be somebody that they're not, that's not good. So a lot of the things that she did to facilitate her own transition broke me out of my own molds and conditioning. And so in a lot of ways, it saved our lives together and it saved our marriage. So not that was in danger of ending, but it was in danger of becoming very dark and tangled and sad, which was not how it started. That is not how our origin story began when we were young together, right? And so her coming out and transitioning helped us to get that back in a lot of ways, but in a new and mature way, which deepened it on this really beautiful level. Mm-hmm. And the life that we live together to now is transcendent for sure. And then we discovered yoga together in that journey.
Oh, that's great.
So as she started to inhabit her body as a woman, she started going to yoga classes. And then we started practicing yoga together. And, through that, we found this new love together. And part of that was getting back some of the life that we had together as very young people, mm-hmm. because we were doing physical things. She and I were doing the Renaissance festivals together, right?
Oh, so she was doing it with you?
Yes. Okay. Yes. And so we were doing the choreographed
oh, that's awesome.
Choreographed combat chess matches, right? So we were stage combatants together. And so we had this, we were very young together. We were doing these really fun physical activities with a lot of people, right? And having a great time with that. And going into a yoga practice much later in our lives together, we got a lot of that back, but in a deeper way and in a really beautiful way. So I would definitely say that it helped us to grow in every way possible, deeper and also more expansively, both in our interior life together and also, as a couple together out in the world. And again, sort of sharing what's possible when you just accept each other for who mm-hmm. you are and then go from there.
And even on her end, telling people that she had a partner that was supportive through the whole thing is probably another envious trait that you guys have, but it's also hopeful for people to be like, you can be yourself and still have someone who loves you wholeheartedly. And I think that that's important for everyone. And through this, the education part, so mm-hmm. people making ignorant comments, people not understanding your story. I feel like both of you are probably at a very good place in your life where it doesn't affect you as much as it could for other people, maybe just coming out or not having each other like you do. But how do you handle that? Because it's everywhere, right?
And that can be very, very difficult. And I will say that if you are going to be an ally, if you are not trans yourself, but you know somebody who is transgender, that the biggest thing that you can do and the most important thing that you can do is to let them say who they are and to be mindful. And this can be a real challenge, to be really mindful about your pronouns and about whatever name that they would like to be called, mm-hmm. and to not be thoughtless about that. And if you do use the wrong pronouns, immediately correct yourself.
Yeah.
Acknowledging that and moving on, even if that person doesn't say anything or make an issue of it, know that every time that you misgender somebody like that, it's a little stab to the heart. And none of us need that, right? It's like life is difficult enough without that. So the biggest thing and most important thing that I think that any ally can do is to really, truly acknowledge who that other person is and is presenting as, and to honor that.
Yeah. Just being respectful, human.
And that's not always easy, right? In the heat of the moment, you're in the middle of a conversation and maybe you've known this person for a long time and now they're going by a different name and a different set of pronouns and all that. Yes, it can be difficult, right? On the other hand, big stars change their names up all the time and say, I want to be called this now. And so I think it's important to recognize that people can say whoever it is that they are. You don't get to decide who they are. They do. And it's important to recognize that and be mindful of it. I think it's also important to remember that for transgender people who are going through these transitions is that every little bit of support and affirmation matters. Every single interaction matters. And people who get that support are far more likely to continue the transition. They're far less likely to commit suicide or take drugs to try to deal with, right? So it's the really simple little human things that we can all do regardless of what somebody's circumstances are. But transgender people are going through a lot more than people who match up with their born gender, if you will, right? We all have struggles, but some of us have many more layers than others.
That's totally true. And I think that's great advice. And it's calm advice where I know when my dad first came out, once I hit high school and people were asking me questions of like, how did he have 4 kids? How is he married to your mom? How is he gay? How, I would get angry. But then I'm like, you know what? I'm going to educate a little bit more than just get angry at it, because maybe it'll open their minds up a little bit. And just taking that kind of patient route where you're just like giving advice to people like, I've lived this. I understand maybe it's different, but it's kind of like being human. Just be respectful and asking questions if you do. But I do feel like sometimes people go a little overboard and it's so ignorant where you're just like, okay, we're done with this conversation now. This is not a good conversation.
I mean, clearly, willful ignorance is bias and prejudice just by another name, right? Just deciding to be, consciously ignorant of something. Yeah. But what are you going to do? I mean, I think you can only try to affect the people that you know that you can reach, and the people who you're not going to be able to change their mind,
bye.
Let that go.
Bye.
There will definitely be somebody else that you have the opportunity to educate, as you said, and do it in a way that's gentle and hopefully long lasting, right? Something that they take with them and that it changes their perception, not just in that moment, but for the rest of their lives.
Of course. And how do the community that you've built around the yoga studio and the location, how do you feel about it?
Pretty amazing. I mean, in the Seminole Heights area, we love Tampa, period. Tampa is a great town, and we really love the Seminole Heights neighborhood. And when Charlotte first began her transition, everybody in the neighborhood knew her as somebody else, right? So we were first having these conversations about coming out in the world together, we had a lot of conversations about leaving Tampa and going somewhere else where we felt like trans people would be more welcome. And then we found actually that when she started going out as herself and we started going out together, that people either just didn't notice, didn't care, or were outwardly supportive, right? It was surprising and in a lovely way.
How refreshing.
Very refreshing. And so as this idea developed of us, and we had always had this idea of opening our own shop together of some kind, right? We didn't know that it was going to be yoga. And that was a fairly recent development as we discovered yoga
together. Like a project together, you mean? You always had an idea of just doing something.
Yeah. And aside from being spouses and partners and friends, she and I have also worked together on different projects. And we work together very well, also recognizing that that's very rare for a married couple to also work together really effectively.
But I love that because it shows like you chose this person to live your life with. Why can't you work together?
Yeah. So I feel pretty lucky about that. And so as we started getting out into the community and discovering that actually this town that we had always really loved totally accepted Charlotte for who she was, and not just accepted her, but in a lot of ways completely celebrated her. And so being able to find that space on Florida Avenue, it coming available and all of that, all of those pieces fell in together, and it made sense that we would be able to open a studio right in this neighborhood and have it be in with the name All Y'all and what that encompasses, everything that particular phrase encompasses, the inclusivity. I'm also just a brown-eyed girl from Tennessee. I'm a Southerner, have lived in the South pretty much my whole life. And the friendly informality of that is definitely something that we wanted to bring to the community. And, considering that we're focusing on 3 particular types of yoga that we want to expand into the community, the things that we found within yoga, we want to share that with the wider community. And having it be right in the urban core is a big part of the mission, right? And being a big part of why we want to be right here in the middle of the urban core where, lots of different people are here. And that's what we want to celebrate and help hold space for.
Do you notice any kind of conflict between both of you and your mission, or did you come together with this on your, like, did it just fall together?
A lot of it fell together. Now, that's not to say that she and I have not
of course.
ended up in places where we're like, wait, that's not exactly the vision that I had. That's not exactly the vision I had either. But, you know, we've been together for a really long time, and we've also learned how to disagree, right? And that's an important part of being in a partnership, is learning how to disagree, and also to not be knocked off your center if you do disagree, right? Just because you disagree with somebody doesn't mean the end of a relationship.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it can be something that helps you further the relationship, and you may not be able to see that. So there have definitely been a couple of places where we haven't seen eye to eye, but overall, like the overall vision of what we see happening in that studio, and that overarching vision really kind of helps us work through any of the places where we don't quite see eye to eye on things. So that's a good thing.
Of course. And I think the perfect point is to just tell our listeners, relationships take work, and you are still working on it every day, right? You both are growing every day. Exactly.
Yeah, you're never not working.
It doesn't just fall together and everything's perfect. And you both have just been on this journey together and separately. But how much work you put in every day.
And I will say, though, as another facet of that, is that in our interior life together, we're also not particularly mature. Like, we don't really care so much about whether the kitchen is cleaned or if the floor is picked up, or, you know what I mean? Like, if it's the balance between that and going out and having fun somewhere, we always tend closer to the going out and having fun and leaving the kitchen dirty. I like
that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's important.
I don't need to do the dishes right now. We're going out.
I mean, I think, and that's important, right? Because when you get to the end of your life, does it really matter how many dishes you cleaned, or does it matter whether
laundry
you
folded? No. Yeah. It'll be in that pile in the corner.
Yeah.
Let it live its life in the corner.
We often make jokes to each other in the house that it's kind of like there are a couple of unsupervised teenagers living in the house whose parents might show up any minute now, but we're not really worried about it.
I love that. Yeah, it's fine. I think that's a perfect balance to tell. You're like, no, we choose fun. Dishes are fun. It's fun.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's like those very, very, very small things that people get in fights about or disagree about. And it's like, take every moment. Take every moment and enjoy it. So what are some of the goals for this yoga studio? We can tell everybody about what you and Charlotte have envisioned. And next steps, the journey and the ribbon cutting and everything.
Oh, yay. So for the studio, which is, as we sit here today chatting, the paint crew is at the studio, starting to transform the space from a job site into, a beautiful studio space. Which is super exciting. And it's really great to see all of that coming together. So the overall vision that Charlotte and I have for the studio is to focus on 3 types of yoga as our core curriculum, right? So our regular daily, weekly offerings will just focus on 3 types of yoga that we hope are going to be complementary to what's already offered in the community, right? So rather than overlapping other things that are offered.
That's cool.
We're going to offer Baptiste Power Yoga, which is a particular type of power yoga that when we got into it with Jennifer Huber, who is one of the most well-known teachers here in the area of that particular type of yoga and has a lot of experience teaching it and taking her classes, discovered that this particular methodology of power yoga is amazing. It's very comprehensive and it's very integrated in the body, mind, and spirit. And then, so we're going to do the Baptiste Power Yoga and then beginner yoga, which is essentially going to be the same Baptiste Power Yoga, but modified for people who, and focusing on the 5 classical pillars of yoga. So come find out more about that. The 5 classical pillars involve, aligning your skeleton and breathing and creating heat in the body. And so in the beginner's class, we'll be really focusing on those fundamentals so that people who are not familiar with yoga can become familiar with those fundamentals. Now, when I say beginners, I'm not talking about like easy, it is definitely still going to be movement.
Yes.
But then the 3rd type of yoga that we're going to offer is Yoga Nidra, which is a lovely, relaxing, effortless meditation technique where you actually get to lay down rather than
love that.
Yeah. You get to lay down and get completely comfortable. But sometimes it can be a challenge for us to just be still, right? Sometimes it's even more challenging to be still than it is to move. And
I feel
so
like
Yoga
that's been my
Nidra
hardest thing with yoga is the
is
just the end of just
Savasana.
and you're like, why
Yeah.
can't I stop my mind from moving? Like just
Yeah.
going and going. And
And
you're
Nidra
right. It
is
sounds effortless, but it's not.
Yeah, it's physically effortless, but the effort then becomes, turning off the effort of the mind. And so it's a guided meditation technique. And the teacher guides the practitioners by the use of their voice into turning inward, into focusing on awareness of the breath coming in and out of the body, and then the skeleton itself, right? The actual physical body, and calling attention to parts of the physical body so that as a meditator, right, as you're laying there in this meditation, your mind isn't wandering because the teacher is specifically guiding you to particular points in the body. And then further, you go deeper into that, into the energetic systems of the body and the visualization part of the brain and the touching into the intuitive and instinctual parts of the brain. And to be more scientific about it, it's Yoga Nidra helps the brain reach the same place where we sleep and dream, but in a conscious state. So we get to access these parts of our brain that we only usually experience when we're asleep. And all kinds of really beautiful things can happen when you access that part of your brain consciously, including a lot of healing, emotional healing and mental healing. And this is why the VA administration, when they discovered this technique and did a study on it, found that war veterans who were suffering significantly from PTSD had a deep reduction in the symptoms of PTSD. So they had far less insomnia, fewer nightmares, fewer dissociative states, right, where they just kind of shut down. And so, if that's a technique that can help people with PTSD symptoms, obviously it can help with a whole host of other less traumatic things like just everyday stress and anxiety. So it's a really powerful technique.
How you teach as well? Does Charlotte teach?
She does. Now, she teaches hot yoga at the Gaze Hot Yoga Studio, just a little bit south of where our studio is going to be. She's also certified in the Baptiste Power Yoga, so she will also be filling in. Now, Charlotte also has a full-time job and will still be doing that. I've gone to this full-time, but she will also be teaching here and there and primarily teaches the hot yoga series over at Gaze.
With the meditation, do you see a time frame where people kind of finally get it? Is it the first class? Is it after a month of it? Is it because I feel like it's really hard work? It sounds like, oh, I'm laying there just healing myself, but it's not. And I think that's one of the ones that most interests me because the guided meditation is I'm really not good at doing it myself. But guided meditation, do you notice as a teacher? Do you notice people finally getting it? Like that aha moment for them?
Those are beautiful to see, and people come to it at different places. I've certainly seen that in teaching yoga class, movement yoga classes, right, where we go through asana and breath, and then we end class with a meditation. Certainly have seen that. Rarely have I seen it just after one class for somebody who has just come into the practice for the very first time. But one of the things that I have seen, which is beautiful, is people who come back to the practice after many years of not practicing, and then they come back to it. And I think they access that state more quickly. And one of the students that I had, who hadn't practiced yoga in 20 years and was coming back to it a little bit later in her life after her first class, it was very clear that she had kind of hit that state and got it and realized, that's why I was doing it. Why did I ever stop?
This feels good.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a beautiful thing to see.
I love that you both teach. So making that decision as a couple, her staying full-time, you going full-time to the yoga, was that a hard decision for you both, or you kind of knew?
We knew we were, the practicalities of that. We got to the place where we realized that we would be okay on her salary with the capital that we had been able to put aside to be able to start the studio and be able to. I could no longer continue to divide my attention between my previous full-time job and trying to do all of the necessary things to make the studio successful. So it was a pretty easy decision to reach. The other side of that, obviously, is that from a business perspective, that studio needs to be successful in order to justify my having gone to it full time. But I think we've made a pretty the decision was easy to reach, to answer your question. Now, whether that turns out to be a sound decision, we shall see. I feel like I think we've got a good model business-wise. And I think also, and really more important than that, is that we're holding space in the community for people who might not otherwise feel welcome in yoga spaces, and that we're so clearly aligned on. And in all of the conversations that we've had with people, they feel that too. And so I feel very confident that people will come because they want to have that experience, and in a place where they know that they're going to be fully welcomed.
Mm-hmm. No labels, no anything. Just come on in, and all y'all come on in.
Yeah, try it out.
Yeah, try it out. So what's been the biggest challenge personally and professionally through this journey?
Oh, that's a really good question.
Loaded. I'm just kidding.
So professionally, there have not really been a lot of struggles to walk away from my old job. I loved it in a lot of ways. The work that I got to do working with nurses almost exclusively.
Oh.
Nurses are amazing.
They are.
Nurses are really incredible. They take care. They specifically go into a career where they're taking care of people who are not at their best, right? And often really fucking cranky as a result, right?
Or their family members are cranky as shit. Yeah, exactly.
And so I really enjoyed the work that I got to do with nurses over all of that time. But, doing that from my home all by myself, sitting in front of a laptop, that takes its toll. So walking away from that, and having to say goodbye to all of the nurses, and some of them I definitely have not said completely goodbye to. They're still in Florida, a lot of them, and I have a feeling that our paths will cross again, which would be great. But walking away in general from that position, that was not challenging at all. I have found that since I quit that and have gone full-time to all y'all, that I'm busier than I've ever been.
Crazy, right?
I'm exhausted and excited all at the same time, and that's a good place to be. Personally, I do feel stretched in a lot of different directions. Ironically, not doing a whole lot of yoga at the moment, but trying to, in the moment, be really mindful and practice breath awareness and all the things just in the moment, whatever I find myself doing, but carving out the time to actually do a personal practice of yoga and meditation. That's been very challenging the last few weeks. And I feel the lack of that for sure.
Keeping you balanced.
Yeah. But I also recognize that right now, with all the studio build out, those are all things that will be completed and done. And I won't have to be out shopping for massive pieces of furniture. And, all of those kinds of things will be settled and finished once the studio opens, and there will be more of a routine. And once I have a routine, I'll be able to, build that back in. Yeah. But it has been very personally challenging to, maintain that same kind of balance when there are all of these transformative things happening to get the studio ready.
Oh, yeah. And you've recognized it. So it's a challenge you accepted. And you're like, okay, here we go. I need more yoga in my life. But you'll have a lot of that. And of course,
I'm surrounded by teachers who are reminding me to be in that practice. And so I did carve out the time to go and do that yesterday. And I'm very glad that I did. It was great.
And you built your staff?
Yes.
Building?
Yeah. So we have some secured teachers that we know for sure are coming on board. And then I've been having conversations with potential teachers over the last couple of weeks. That's very exciting, being able to talk yoga with people
community.
who are interested in it and interested in the particular type of yoga, and also interested in the mission that our studio has. That's all been great. I think we'll have those finalized and folks on the schedule probably by the end of the week next week, that'll be the beginning of February, right? So we're hoping to open our doors February 10. Okay. That's that Monday. And then our grand opening is going to be on Valentine's Day.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I think
we're
well
cutting?
on track. Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So that'll be on Valentine's Day.
I think I put that in my calendar already. EB's ribbon cutting.
Yay.
I love that.
And so, we're really excited about that. And I think so we'll have a lot of the finalized pieces in place probably I'm thinking by the end of this coming week. So that'll be at the end of January, right? Right as we're wrapping up the end of the first month of the year. Hi, 2020. Here we are.
Isn't that insane? Everyone always jokes that January takes forever. I don't think so. I think it has flown by. I don't even understand that joke. Yeah, I don't even understand. Yeah. I mean, this will probably launch right after your ribbon cutting. But I'm like, no, this has flown. There's no way. No. And you're at the beginning of February. You're like, we're only a
I
month
still
into
haven't taken down
2020.
some of our Christmas stuff. I just want to say, like,
Nice confessional.
because
This is now a confessional.
yeah, Charlotte and I decided to go and have fun instead of worrying about
love
taking
that.
down the last of the Christmas stuff.
You're the ones I drive by and I'm like, the wreaths are still on the door. I get it. It's fine. Just embrace it. Embrace it. Just leave it till next year. It's fine. So, I mean, you've given a lot of good advice throughout this whole thing, but what's something you want the listeners to kind of remember about EB and all y'all yoga and just life in general?
Oh, thank you.
Elizabeth is EB, by the way.
Yeah, those are my initials. Feel free to call me EB. Really, anything. I'll answer to anything. Just don't call me late to dinner because I really, really like dinner. So it's good that I do a lot of yoga to make up for the dinners. So thank you for asking the question, because one of the things that I have seen and experienced for myself, not taking care of myself, is if you need permission, I am giving you permission here and now to take care of yourself. So take care of yourself in whatever form that takes. Because once you do that, it's put your own oxygen mask on first, right?
Those are the rules.
Yes.
Those are the rules.
I mean, I think that is really good advice, because your skeleton and everything that's built up on top of it is, as far as we know, whatever else may be true, that's what we've got to deal with, right? We've all got to be in this skeleton that we've got to carry around with us. So take care of it, and then you'll be able to do anything else that you want to accomplish.
Isn't that crazy too? Because it's so true. People are helping others and they're just not their bodies, their mind. I was in that for a long time with my relationship. And then when I finally opened my eyes and I was like, wait a second, I need to get back to who I am. But self-care doesn't have to be a spa day for like $400. Self-care is literally just doing something good for your body or your soul. It could be free. It could be free.
And it doesn't have
breathe
to
outside.
be, I mean, it doesn't have to be a long-term thing either. I mean, one of the things that I promised myself, this is a really small thing, very small thing, is that every single morning when I got up, before I drank my first cup of coffee, is that I would brush my teeth. Now, this was just not a habit, right? But I discovered that if I didn't brush my teeth, I wasn't really tasting my delicious coffee, right? So I literally just made it a habit that, like, whatever else I did, the second that I got up, I had to brush my teeth.
How'd that change your life?
And I mean, it because it helped me to carve out time where all I was doing was brushing my teeth. That's it. I was doing nothing else in the world. And because I made a promise to myself that it would be the very first thing that I did when I was awake, when you do something the instant you wake up, if you make that promise to yourself that you're going to do it the instant that you wake up, by the time you are fully awake, you've already accomplished that thing. And this is what I found for myself, is like this tiny little thing that literally took me 2 minutes, right? 60 seconds for the top teeth, 60 seconds for the bottom teeth, is that I'm like, if I can carve out that kind of time, then maybe I can carve out that same amount of time to stand in tree while I'm brushing my teeth, right? So here I am first thing in the morning, and now I'm going to challenge my just waking up body by standing on one foot.
Why not?
So that one little thing, and that would be the other thing that I would say is that, if you're going to launch into something new, and a lot of the neuroscience backs this up, right? Is that if you're going to launch into something new, don't go for absolute complete transformation in the first day. Start small with something that you can keep a hold of and maintain. And that's why I picked brushing my teeth. Just brush your damn teeth every single morning. Don't forget. And then at 11 o'clock, go, why does my mouth taste so horrible?
Oh my gosh. I love how transparent you are with that. You're like, listen, brush your teeth.
Just brush your teeth. And from there, several other things fall. Oh, maybe I should wash my face too, so that I don't get to 11 o'clock and feel like, why do I feel like I have clay on my face? So it was starting with those little things that helped me. Now, that's not to say that I don't have lazy behaviors. Please don't think that I'm definitely not standing on a mountain proclaiming. I am still an exceedingly flawed human being. But, start small so that you can stick with it. Definitely.
I love that.
And give yourself permission. I see this a lot, is that people find all kinds of reasons not to look after themselves, but to look after everybody else. Yeah. Get out of your own way.
You're like, really? Really?
But it's fair, right? We need those reminders. We get tied up because we do belong to each other, right? And so we want to look after each other. But it is just as legitimate to look after yourself, because when you look after yourself, you actually are looking after everybody else too.
I know. That's So true. I love that. I love that. Okay, go over your handles, website, all that fun stuff.
Okay, so we are All Y'all Yoga Tampa on Instagram. All Y'all Yoga, which also allyallyoga.com, which actually, if you look at it, is Ali Oga, which was totally like, we didn't even notice that until we were, typing it out for the first time. So if that helps you remember,
that helps
Ali
you spell,
Yoga. And then we're also on the MindBody app. Classes are started.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we've started to post the classes. We do have a tentative launch date of February 10.
Okay.
So hopefully all of those, all of the studio build out things will happen, in place for us to get that. So February 10, maybe a day or two after that, but we're up and running and we're trying to stay up on social media so that we can keep updating people and all of that. So hopefully we'll have a schedule finalized and all of that good stuff coming very soon so people can start actually planning when they want to come to classes.
Come meet EB and Charlotte. Amazing two humans. I think you're going to do great things for the community.
Thank
right?
you.
As long as you stay focused. Eye on the prize.
Yeah. And hopefully Charlotte can join us next time.
We'll do it again. We'll do it after you open. I always like to kind of hear how everything's going. Or kind of like how the community is more involved now. I mean, I love that the neighborhood embraced you and everything that you were doing. I think that's a beautiful thing. Again, another hopeful story for people who think they need to like move their whole life away from.
To not make assumptions. When I told my next door neighbor, when you see a woman coming out of the front door who used to be somebody else, when I told her, her response was, how cool is that? That's so awesome. So I think also, not making assumptions about how people are going to feel about that too, and just kind of remaining open to that. Because, I think almost every single person that I have run across has not just been supportive, but been enthusiastic.
Well, your amazing energy gives off, and it's like, if they want to be an asshole, you're not really going to accept that shitty energy. And you're going to be like, where I feel like your energy portrays just the love of everybody and acceptance, where they're like, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. So I think a lot has to do with your energy too, which is amazing. But I think you have a hopeful story, and now you're building a community around it. Yeah. And I love that.
Thank you.
I love it. Too inspiring. I'm British.
Yeah. All y'all, come on.
All y'all. Also, Ali.
Ali Yoga.
You can find EB on Not a Great Whisper, IG, KatieRay.com. All the podcasts will be on there, and at The Real K Ray on Instagram. And we are at BKN Creative Studio in Ybor. You heard the Roosters today, and you are signing off with Morty's music. EB, thank you.
Thank you, Katie.